पार्टी की सरकार, ये रेवड़ी की सरकार भी है, बेवड़ी सरकार भी।
Big liquor scam face off in the national capital. BJP calls Aam Aadmi Party government a Revdi and Bevdi Sarkar. But the Aam Aadmi Party brazens it out. Sisodia chooses to flaunt the NYT article instead.
आपने तय कर दिया ये जंग छेड़कर कि 2024 की लड़ाई मोदी बनाम केजरीवाल होगी, क्योंकि लोग पूछते थे मोदी बनाम हु।
No answers to liquor scam allegations. Aam Aadmi Party makes it about 2024, says it will be Modi versus Kejriwal. CBI issues first summons in the liquor scam case, asked to appear at the CBI headquarters. In an exclusive conversation with Republic, Mumbai Commissioner of Police says police on high alert over 2611 threat messages. Right, Republic has accessed a report by the Vigilance Department which highlights the role of excise officials in implementation of the policy and issuing of licenses across the city. It was cited by the report that an earnest money deposit of rupees 30 crores was refunded to the bidder for the airport zone after he failed to get a no objection certificate for opening liquor vends at the IGI airport. The report also cited various decisions made by officials of the Excise Department without prior approval of the Council of Ministers or even the Lieutenant Governor, as is the norm now. A waiver of rupees 144.36 crore rupees on tendered license fee, citing effects of COVID-19, was given to licensees despite the fact that no specific provision for compensation in the form of reduction in tendered license fee was available in the tender document. This resulted in blatant undue benefits to licensees and loss to the public exchequer. This is a vigilance report subsequent to the Lieutenant Governor ordering a CBI probe. So, for example, on page 12, between page 6 and 10, in fact, the policy changes that were made on June 23-21. That's when the policy was introduced. The license fee was decreased from 250 crore rupees to 150 crore rupees. As also the size of the liquor vend in carpet area, so that it became cheaper for those licensees to start the operations. And on June 24, the next day, the Secretary of Finance noted on the file that for these changes, the opinion of the Lieutenant Governor has to be sought. But that was overruled by Deputy Chief Minister Manish Sisodia. So on June 23, the Council of Ministers takes a decision. The Finance Secretary the next day says that this decision needs approval of the Lieutenant Governor. The Deputy Chief Minister Manish Sisodia overrules that, and then every officer falls in line. So a breach of norms happens, and then the officers toe the line. That's something which comes out of this report. Another page 12 example of how Manish Sisodia personally intervened to make sure that what he wanted to do, he got away with it, bypassing certain norms, including again not taking the approval both of the Council of Ministers and the Lieutenant Governor. So, for example, on July 9, 2021, Manish Sisodia intervened to direct that the earnest money deposit of the successful bidder, who subsequently failed to obtain the NOC from Airports Authority for the airport zone, that money be returned. Now, there was no provision in the norms for revert of that kind of money. This was brought to the notice of the Finance Department by the Planning Department, and again this was overruled. So overruled at two levels. First, the excise department itself noted that if the provision of return of EMD was introduced, it could make some bidders to quote unrealistically high prices and block others from participating in the tender. And then the planning department said that this is not right. Both the objections of the excise department and the planning department were overruled by Manish Sisodia, the deputy chief minister who's under scanner now of the CBI, and then the policy went ahead. Shawan Sen joins me live from Bengaluru. And Shawan, you know, this is damning. This vigilance report really calls spade a spade and puts to a smithereen the argument that all process was followed when the policy was brought in. In fact, it seems that Manish Sisodia, the deputy chief minister, took very personal interest at every stage and even overruled objections raised by the finance secretary, raised by the finance department, raised by the planning department, raised by the excise department, and went ahead with the changes that he wanted to be brought. The question is, for whom was he doing this? Why he was doing this? Shawan.
Well, there was something amiss. This was already highlighted by the Chief Secretary in the report that was prepared. In fact, that was also shared with the Delhi Police's Economic Offences Wing when they had basically asked the Excise Department to basically give the full details of the way the policy was tweaked and tweaked for what particular reason. Now, what turns out is that from that report of the Chief Secretary, that there is glaring financial malpractices. Now, for instance, in the CBI FIR that has been registered, there is a reference that is basically made to the fact that there are certain liquor companies with an annual turnover of 150 crore rupees. What does that essentially mean? When you have a capping of an annual turnover of 150 crore rupees, you are indirectly saying that only the big players would be there. The smaller players are not going to even participate. And that is exactly what led to the cartelization. Now, from this particular report that you've also accessed, Abhishek, the report that you accessed yesterday and today, if you really join the dot, you actually get a full picture of what was really happening of a policy that was brought in 2021, and within a span of 1 year, it has only created havoc within the system. It has only ensured that the smaller players are in no position to even participate in the bidding process. And more importantly, were the liquor companies, or for that matter, middlemen, a part of this entire framing of the policy? Because if you take a look at the details that have been put out by the Central Bureau of Investigation, it only goes on to indicate that yes, there are about 4 to 5 players who are considered to be very close to the Deputy Chief Minister, someone who's looking after the Excise Department, and it is they who are basically making the money. In fact, categorically, there is a mention of the fact that some of the alleged close associates of Manish Sisodia, they were basically collecting the commission from the licensees. So the fact of the matter here is that prima facie it becomes abundantly clear that there is an element of corruption which needs to be probed. Now, who exactly was responsible for it? Was it directly coming in? Orders were directly coming in from the Deputy Chief Minister? That is not known. Perhaps we'll have to wait for the investigation to gain more momentum and one gets a better idea of what's really, who was really behind it. Because keeping aside the political rhetoric, it's important to point out here is that this policy, what the Aam Aadmi Party has basically touted as a policy which has only favoured the consumers. It is a policy which has only favoured a proper competition in the market. But the reality seems to be very different. And the only benchmark here is the fact that the government essentially was not making any money out of it. And where exactly did the money really go? Was it pocketed by the liquor companies? It does appear, if you really simply stick to the statistics.
Yeah, Shawan, so specific instances of how Manish Sisodia intervened personally to make sure that the changes he wanted were implemented irrespective of whether due process was followed or not. So another one, for example, on price changes, which is something which makes one wonder why the policy did not bring in the intended benefits. So for example, when the wholesale prices are reduced, the argument was that only wholesale prices were down and that would not affect the retailers' margins. Now, this explains perhaps why, while the sales increased, the revenue to the government did not. Now, but that's not the end. If you look at the notings, Shawan, in the file that we have accessed, it says when the finance department raised objections. So it's not that objections were not there. It's almost like Manish Sisodia was driving roughshod either on his own whims or under guidance of somebody. Now, when the finance department raises objections, that's on October 28, 2021, so far as the price rise is concerned. And he wrote through the file that the excise department, the finance secretary, in fact, wrote on the file that the excise department should present a comparative picture with the prices brought down, what would be the revenue coming into the government and what would be the margins that the retailers would get. That comparative study would have given a clear picture to the government that the government is benefiting or not, or the retailers are benefiting or not. And interestingly, on the same file, Manish Sisodia writes, the proposal of excise department is reasonable and accordingly approved. The ratification can be done later by the cabinet. Manish Sisodia overruling the objection of the finance department on the price rise. They were just wanting a comparative study. He said no need. The decision by the excise department is reasonable. Let's go ahead. The cabinet can post facto approve the decision made. So this clearly gives an indication, not just an indication, in fact, a very broad picture emerges of this vigilance report, Shawan, that Manish Sisodia was guiding every decision making and he was in control of things. He was able to influence bureaucrats from top to bottom. And in fact, after he would intervene, rest of the officers would just toe the line and forget about the norms, rules, and the breach of procedure that was happening all through that 8 or 9 months that this policy was extant. In fact, the vigilance report goes on to observe that for all these reasons, the excise policy was void ab initio. It should not have been there in place, given the fact that there was no approval from the Lieutenant Governor for the same. So I think this is something for which we would seek answers from the Aam Aadmi Party. Remember, they have been in all the press conferences turning the argument on its head insofar as investigation is concerned, Shawan, and bringing in a political element to it, saying that this is all political vendetta. Remember the story that we broke yesterday of the cabinet note. Nowhere mentioned any political pressure or vendetta of which, and when the Kejriwal government cabinet on its own decided to revert back to the old policy. I think Harsha is joining us live from outside the CBI where the questioning is going on, as also Piyush Ohri outside the Aam Aadmi Party office. All right, let's go to Harsha first. Harsha, you were there at the CBI office. Is the questioning still on of the 5 accused? It's been more than a couple of hours. Are you hearing something from inside? What the CBI is doing, in which direction the investigation is heading, in which direction the questioning is going?
Exactly, we got to know that the entire questioning started at 3 o'clock when the 5 accused came here for the questioning, because CBI had summoned them for today for the questioning. But we have very important lead which we have got to know, that Dinesh Arora, the main person who is also said to be the right hand of Deputy CM Manish Sisodia, and in the entire press conference of BJP leaders many times, we have seen Pravesh Verma, Manoj Tiwari, Anurag Thakur showing us the details how Dinesh Arora is linked with Manish Sisodia. And not only this, how come Dinesh Arora has become the middleman, and he's a businessman who hails from Delhi. He's also inside, and questioning is also happening because he's the only person who was involved till the commission price was hiked. The commission from 2.5% to 12% was made, and also the private parties were introduced from Telangana, Goa and Maharashtra, and even from Delhi. Many liquor mafias who didn't even have the vents, who didn't even have the liquor shops. How come the meetings were arranged by this middleman Dinesh Arora only, between Aam Aadmi Party government bureaucrats and private parties? Several meetings happened. So we are getting to know that the questioning is happening with Dinesh Arora at this time. Very important lead, which CBI is getting is regarding the investigation details and the framing and drafting, because it was alleged that entire framing and drafting was also done and his involvement was sent. Back to you.
All right, let me go back to Shravan on that note. Shravan, after the FIR, the investigation has picked up pace by the CBI. We saw almost 14-hour-long questioning cum search at the residence of Manish Sisodia yesterday, and 30 other locations, not just in Delhi NCR, but across the country. And today they have followed it up with the summoning of 5 of the accused and questioning happening there. What is your sense? Is this moving in the direction of Manish Sisodia ultimately being questioned and possibly arrested, given the kind of evidence that the CBI would have gathered over the last 48 hours, including from his home, where we believe that the computer data and a lot of emails, they have been scanned and copied and taken, and maybe they would be studied, based on which Manish Sisodia himself could be questioned very soon, Shravan?
Well, in fact, on that very question, I can stick my neck out, Abhishek, and say that he should be counting his days right now, because the summons are going to come out any time now. What is essentially happening right now, and perhaps is part of the procedure, because the Central Bureau of Investigation operates slightly different than the other agencies. And just to put across what has happened so far, what do we know so far, and what could happen. Let me begin off what has happened so far. In terms of the seizure that has been made after the search warrants were issued, and thereafter they went across to about 31 locations. These 31 locations basically include premises of the 15 accused, and which also includes some of the public servants. Now, one of the damning thing that they have recovered so far is certain confidential notings. Now, these files that were recovered from the resident or the premises of the public servant is something that has raised an alarm, simply because that was not the place where these confidential files should have been in the first place. That's the reason why the seizure has taken place. Now, talking about at least 4 characters in this entire FIR that has been registered are very crucial for this entire investigation, simply because they're considered to be the suspected or alleged close associates of Manish Sisodia. The reason being is 2 things. One, there is a company called Indo Spirits, a company which has an annual turnover of over 150 crore. It is suspected that there are 2 companies which have been favored heavily because of this excise policy, and these 2 companies find some connection with the Deputy Chief Minister. That is the reason why perhaps you see the Bharatiya Janata Party is walking the extra mile of going ahead and saying that it is Manish Sisodia who's squarely responsible. And however, having said that, they're also saying that the kingpin here happens to be the Chief Minister himself. But coming back to the investigation part, what essentially is going to happen is that in the next few days, they are going to complete the questioning of a few more people. I'm given to understand from my sources that there could be few arrests. The arrests could take place, whether it's going to be of public servants or those, the liquor companies, owners of liquor companies. That clarity perhaps would come in some time from now. At least on 2 counts, I would say I'll stick my neck out. One, with regards to Manish Sisodia being called in for questioning by the Central Bureau of Investigation. Second, as far as arrests are concerned, I can also show you, there is a high possibility of few arrests taking place very soon. There is a high possibility of that happening. Who exactly would that be? Perhaps we'll have to gather some more information before we put that out for all our viewers. Now, what has not happened so far? There hasn't been any cash recovery. There hasn't been any cash recovery, which is essentially why the Aam Aadmi Party is basically saying that where is the money? Where is the money that you are saying that Manish Sisodia has essentially made? But having said that, now it's too early, because remember, they need to examine multiple things. Last evening, the reason why the Central Bureau of Investigation officers, they came out much later, was primarily because they were taking the dumps of the emails of Manish Sisodia. A mirror of the same has been provided to the Deputy Chief Minister. All that examination is going to take time.
Shravan, I have a question. There seems to be a lot of smoke, and sure, there must be some fire. Where is the investigation headed? I mean, which direction the investigation is heading into? That's what I believe the viewers would want to understand. If there is no, because you mentioned there is no recovery of cash, there is still a charge made by CBI in the FIR itself of quid pro quo. If Manish Sisodia is giving 30 crore rupees of earnest money back to the vendor licensee, if there is shortfall of revenue to the tune of about 900 crore rupees in one quarter, if 144 crore rupees are lost because of adjusting of because of the waiver due to COVID, is it likely that all this happened because these business groups, these vendors, these liquor companies, they in turn came back to Aam Aadmi Party and possibly helped them, say, in Goa, in Punjab? I'm saying, where would the money have gone, given the fact that there is no cash that has been recovered? And if there is a charge of quid pro quo?
Well, in fact, Abhishek, there is an answer in your question itself, because in terms of the quid pro quo, what has essentially happened is that it need not be the form of just simply cash. It could also be, if I can just borrow it from another investigation that a federal agency is doing, that's the Enforcement Directorate in the Patrachal redevelopment scam. Now, as far as Sanjay Raut is concerned, remember what has happened in that case is that the kingpin there, Praveed Raut, was the man who was providing the money to Sanjay Raut's wife. Now, how was the money really going? The money was basically either they were being utilized in the form of land, purchase of land, or it was basically buying tickets, or there are several other things, the link that was coming up with the kingpin and the transfer of money that was basically taking place. So hard cash recovery may not be the case. In which way the favors were given? Remember, there are certain donations that the party also would be receiving. There are allegations that have been leveled. There are donations that have been received by the Aam Aadmi Party. Now, whether there is any truth to it, it is for the CBI to really find out that whether these liquor companies, through perhaps their other subsidiary companies, were providing the money to Manish Sisodia, or for that matter to the Aam Aadmi Party in some way or the other, or for that matter money in Punjab, money in Goa, money in Uttar Pradesh for the election campaigning, whether that was being utilized, it is for the CBI to really find out. But it can be in various forms. It can be various forms. It could be through certain other companies. There are few things that they will be looking into. Certain companies, whether companies were floated, whether there is a possibility of existence of shell companies, because there is an element of money laundering that prima facie we can see, and that is the reason why even the Enforcement Directorate has basically been sniffing around this very investigation. So there is a high possibility in the days to come, Abhishek, that the ambit of this entire investigation could certainly widen.
Might broaden, absolutely. In fact, we'll try to get some live reactions to this development that we have brought out, viewers, and a very exclusive one, which is the Vigilance report of the Department of Vigilance, which clearly shows a certain personal interest being taken by Deputy Chief Minister Manish Sisodia over a period of almost 6-8 months during the time that the policy was extant. The new excise policy, right from the time that it was brought into the time in the last cabinet when it was revoked, it was Manish Sisodia who was guiding all the decisions, overruling objections of departments and bureaucrats and officers, and really driving roughshod, so to say. So why was he doing that? That's something we would want to look at if we get some live reactions. But before that, let's listen into what Delhi BJP leader Manoj Tiwari had to say.
देखिए, वो मेरा नाम लेकर के जितना गाली देना हो दे लीजिए। मैं डेटा पे बात कर रहा हूं। मेरी कोई मनीष सिसोदिया से, अरविंद केजरीवाल से हमारी पर्सनली जमीन जायदाद का झगड़ा नहीं है। मैं इस दिल्ली का एक सांसद हूं और मुझे दिल्ली के लोगों के तरफ से दिल्ली के लूट पर सवाल करने का अधिकार है। डेटा पे बोल रहा हूं मैं। आज भी मनीष जी ने बोला, मनीष सिसोदिया, देखो भी मैं जी बोल रहा हूं कि दिस इज बेस्ट लिकर पॉलिसी देश में, और डेटा कह रहा है कि 87% ज्यादा विस्की और वाइन बिकी है। तो जब 87% ज्यादा बिकी, बेस्ट पॉलिसी है, तो आप ही ने कहा था ना कि 9,500 करोड़ रुपया इससे आएगा। आया कितना? 1,400 करोड़। क्यों? 8,100 करोड़ कहां चला गया? पहला सवाल। इसके अलावे आप देखिए वो लोग कितने क्रिमिनल माइंडेड हैं। कहते हैं कोई 145 करोड़ कहता है, कोई 30 करोड़ कहता है, कोई 1 करोड़ कहता है, मनोज तिवारी 8000 करोड़ कहते हैं। ये जितना लोग बोले हैं ना, सब अलग अलग, सब घोटाले का ही 5 बिंदु है और टोटल जोड़ करके ये सारे पैसे मनीष सिसोदिया जी आपको जमा करना ही पड़ेगा। इस देश में आप जैसे कह रहे हैं ना कि हम गिरफ्तार हो जाएंगे, आप गिरफ्तार होने के बाद भी पैसा जमा करना पड़ेगा। दिल्ली के खजाने का लूट का पैसा लेकर कोई भाग नहीं सकता, न हम भागने देंगे।
नहीं, लेकिन वो सीधे तौर पर यह कह रहे हैं कि 2024 में आम आदमी पार्टी वर्सेस बीजेपी होने वाला है। प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी के बराबर कद के हो गए हैं अब अरविंद केजरीवाल, और यही बात बीजेपी वालों को रास नहीं आ रही।
शराब पिला के लोकप्रिय हो गए। हमारा आपका बच्चा को अगर पता चले कि 21 की जगह 18 साल में ही कोई सरकार शराब पीने के लिए नियम बना रही है, हम आप उसको पसंद करेंगे? बोले कि 3 बजे रात तक हमारा बच्चा शराब पी के आएगा, 3 बजे रात तक शराब की दुकान खुली रहेगी। ड्राई डे जो 21 दिन ड्राई डे होता है उसको भी हटा करके 3 दिन कर दिया। यही लोकप्रियता है। अगर यही लोकप्रियता है तो जाइए, 25-26 लोग ऐसे ही मोदी जी के सामने ताल ठोकने के लिए खड़े हो रहे हैं।
गुजरात में डर रहे हैं, हिमाचल में डर रहे हैं, पंजाब में सरकार बन रही है।
हाँ, उत्तराखंड में भी डर रहे थे, गोवा में भी डर रहे थे, यूपी में भी डर रहे थे, छत्तीसगढ़ में भी डर रहे थे, मध्य प्रदेश में भी डर रहे थे। कितना डर रहे थे, कांप रहे थे हम आम आदमी पार्टी का नाम सुन के, और हर जगह आम आदमी पार्टी की जमानत जब्त हो गई।
न्यूयॉर्क टाइम्स में जो छपा है,
तो न्यूयॉर्क टाइम में छपा है तो उसके आधार पे आप यहाँ घोटाला करोगे? अखबार में पेड न्यूज छपवा के आप कहोगे कि दिल्ली को लूटने का अधिकार है? कौन परमिशन देगा आपको?
Watch the burning question tonight at 9 p.m.
On the other side, the big interview with Mumbai Police Commissioner Vivek Vansalkar, who speaks on the threats that Mumbai faces at this point in time, but assures Mumbaikars that the city is absolutely safe.
Kashmiri Pandits are staging protest here against the killing of Kashmiri Pandit.
OPS finally getting a win in this matter.
National Investigation Agency teams are leaving the house of Lashkar terrorist Faisal Munir.
And here are some stories in brief, viewers, for you, where the Delhi Congress workers under the leadership of the DPCC president will have carried the Aam Aadmi Party office in New Delhi and have demanded the resignation of the Excise Minister Manish Sisodia following the CBI raid at his house related to the liquor policy scam.
कश्मीर घाटी में आम नागरिकों को निशाना बनाया जा रहा है, बर्दाश्त नहीं किया जाएगा। और
Celebrations happening right in front of the OPS's house.
now showing you the pictures of this flag march which is right now underway. They are staging protest against Pakistan over the civilian killings in the Kashmir Valley.
In a recent
In an exclusive interview to Republic TV, Mumbai Police Commissioner Vivek Vansalkar has assured Mumbaikars that the city is safe. This is in the wake of threats that were basically issued, threats that were received by the Mumbai police on the lines of 26/11. This also comes days after there was a recovery of weapons at the Raigarh coast. The Mumbai Police Commissioner, speaking to my colleague Sandeep, made it abundantly clear that all measures are being taken to ensure that the citizens of Mumbai are safe.
We are investigating thoroughly, and I would like to assure you and our citizens that we will take all necessary steps, whatever warranted. We are investigating thoroughly, and I would like to assure you and our citizens that we will take all necessary steps, whatever warranted.
कश्मीर घाटी में आम नागरिकों को निशाना बनाया जा रहा है, बर्दाश्त नहीं किया जाएगा। और
Celebrations happening right in front of the OPS's house.
now showing you the pictures of this flag march which is right now underway. Staging protest against Pakistan over the civilian killings in the Kashmir Valley.
In a recent development, senior advocate Kapil Sibal attacked the BJP-led central government for misusing the central probing agencies, mocking the Central Bureau of Investigation Agency and terming it as a parrot of the senior advocate, in fact accused the central agencies for parroting the instructions of the BJP leadership. Trinamool Congress Birbhum District President Anubrata Mondal, who was arrested in a 2020 cattle smuggling case last week, was taken for a medical checkup. He will be later produced in the court today. Assam Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma distributed disbursement of the rehabilitation grant through direct beneficiary transfer to victims of the flood. Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma said that those whose houses were damaged completely, partially, will be getting grant from the government. He added that a detailed survey will be.
He heard the question this time very clearly. No answers from him. Our keys continue to be with his men. We faced intimidation here. We've been trying to get in touch with you and ask you several questions on the land deals that you had along with Priyanka Vadra and Robert Vadra. Why are you trying to avoid the cameras?
Once again trying to get in a word with Mr. Vijay Mallya.
Persistently been asking you only one question. Mallya, why did you escape in 2015?
Scam clincher. Republic accesses details vigilance report that flags the discrepancy in Delhi government's policy. Director of Vigilance report levels serious allegations against Sisodia. Was Delhi LG not consulted on the excise policy? Proposal for dry days to be reduced rejected by Sisodia in 2015, approved in 2021 without consultation with ministers.